welcome to another episode of Kink, the Wellbeing podcast with no content boundaries. On this episode, I speak with Kaitlyn Gooch, who encourages us to live a life full of inspired action. She gives us lots of golden nuggets about how to connect with our intuition and living a life out of your comfort zone. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and please let me know if you've got any comments or anything that you'd like us to discuss about mental health and wellbeing. Thank you. Kaitlyn, thank you so much for agreeing to come and speak with us. I'd love for you to start. Just tell us a bit about your life and your career. You've got a multifaceted life and career. I'd love for us to start there, if that's okay.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's really beautiful, and it's just really nice to be in your presence.
Oh, thank you.
I don't really know where to start. I have like you said, a multifaceted. I think that's probably the politest way someone could have described my life. I like to do a lot, but I like to do a lot of what I'm inspired to do. And I'm constantly getting new inspiration and new things to try. So we met through the dance that I did, but that was literally like a download, and I was like, I'm gonna try this out, I'm gonna play with it and see what happens, and I think it went well.
It was amazing.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Coromandel. I moved to Queenstown for 4 years when I was 11, and then I finished high school in Rotorua, but would come back to the Coromandel like every summer. And then when I finished school, I went to Wellington, but I came up here for Labour weekend to the Coromandel, and I saw some lambs, and I kind of had this freak out. I was like, it's spring and I haven't seen lambs, and so I quit my job and moved back to the Coromandel, and then kind of travelled between here, Melbourne and London for like 6 years. Just really trying heaps of different things. I'm very good at knowing if something's not a right fit, so I'll start something and I will not follow it through just because I should. Which obviously has its positives and negatives. But yeah, I feel like because of all of those things, I've got this way of showing up in the world, and people know that if I'm somewhere and I've stayed somewhere, it's because I want to be there. I'm not just going to hang around because I should.
Yeah.
So I guess I live a very authentic and guided by spirit life.
You said that you start something, and if something doesn't feel right to you, then you won't do it. Can you tell us a bit more about?
One example that just comes to mind now is, so I went over to London and worked on a super yacht, and on the yacht I got bullied really badly. And in the super yacht industry, people stick it out, just do it, once you've got at least some experience, then you'll be able to find a boat, blah blah. But I got to this point on this boat where the chief steward was lying about me and had told the captain some stuff, and I saw this email that she'd written about these things that I hadn't done, so I left the boat, and then just decided actually it's not an industry I want to work in when that's the norm, you're treated like shit, and then you just have to stick that out. That's only happening because people continue to let it happen, and it's a cycle, whereas it doesn't have to be like that, and it really shouldn't. Yeah.
And that's kind of relatable in life itself, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That we kind of, learn these things that, we're supposed to show up and just get on with things, and actually,
Yeah. And I think, so a big thing for that is obviously sometimes in life things are going to be hard. And I'm not saying when things get hard, give up. But I'm more saying okay, you're at this situation where it's hard. Why are you here in the first place? Is it because it's something that you want to do and you've dreamed of, or is it something terrible's happened and you're just getting through the motions, or is it hard because you're showing up at a job that you never wanted to do, that you're doing to make your parents proud, kind of thing? Why are you doing what you're doing? And from there establish whether that's a hard that you want to continue to work on, or if it's something that you should leave.
And
if that makes sense.
Is there ways that you kind of connect with yourself in those times when you think, oh, actually, is this right for me? How do you overcome that, I suppose?
Now for me it's really easy because I feel like I am really in touch with myself and spirit and my intuition and all of those things. But as a starting practice, I think just spending time alone. So I meditate every day. It's a non-negotiable for me. And I've probably meditated every day for the past maybe close to 5 years. There's a handful of days that I don't meditate in a year, and it might be that I'm hungover. But usually if I don't wake up and meditate, I'll meditate in the evening. And it's probably about 5 days in a year that I don't meditate every day. But for me, that started as a practice about 4 years or 5 years ago. It would have been 5 years now, where I'd wake up and I'd set my alarm for 5 minutes. So a timer for 5 minutes, I'd wake up, I'd sit up, and I'd just focus on my breathing. Like, that's how my meditation started. And it was just 5 minutes and it was done. And that kind of got to a point where I enjoyed being in that silence, and, you know, I might feel inspired to do stuff after, or like, there's so many benefits now, especially with the science that they're doing to study it, of how you can handle situations better in the day for meditation and things like that. But it got to a point where I was like, oh, I love that feeling, I'm going to do 5 minutes in the evening, and it kind of expanded from there. But it was having that practice of silence, and a lot of people don't deal well with silence, and we're always distracting ourselves, or picking up our phone, or even in our heads with our inner critic and our own voices, distracting ourselves rather than being silent. And that can be scary, but now it kind of feels like second nature.
I kind of love that starting with, starting small and building the habit up from a small. That's really good advice.
I think sometimes we think we want to do this thing, so we're going to go all in, which is great, and if you can, like, cool. But if you want to meditate every day and then you're like, I'm going to meditate for an hour every day, you're not going to do that, because it's quite daunting. If even 20 minutes when you're starting can feel like so long, because you could spend 20 minutes scrolling Instagram or doing whatever, reading a book. But 5 minutes, like, easy. And even if you've only done 5 minutes, like, that is still going to have so much benefit. It's like, even if you want to start reading more, like even reading 5 pages in the morning, and then your book reading for the day is done. But if you feel like reading a little bit more later, you can. Like, just giving yourself that option and not starting too big.
I'd love to know what comfort zones mean to you. How does your comfort zone show up? And any advice that you've got for us who are living in our comfort zones?
I love this question, mainly because pushing myself outside of my comfort zone is probably like one of the reasons I live. I feel like, for me personally, pushing myself outside of my comfort zone has been a way in which I can feel like a thrill of excitement, and like finding that thing that scares me and doing it. I guess probably originally started as a way to like get that adrenaline rush. Because when something's terrifying and you do it, and afterwards you're like, whoa, what the fuck, I did that thing. Now I find it empowering, but and like liberated by that feeling. But at the beginning, it was definitely like a way to chase a high. And I grew up in an environment that was like very heavy of drugs and alcohol abuse with both my parents. So chasing my high, and that I didn't want to do that when I was younger. I didn't want to do drugs and alcohol and things like that because of what I'd seen. So I had to find different ways to like get that excitement. I also really used to love like skids and drag racing.
Wow.
And being in the car when that was being young, because it was another way to like chase that high. Definitely a lot safer to push yourself outside of your comfort zone and do like this scary but liberating thing, rather than getting in a car that's going really fast in circles.
I think it's real fascinating that you saw your parents going through, drugs and abusing drugs and alcohol, and you managed to stay away from that yourself, because I can relate to that from my family as well. But sadly, I did go the other way. But I'm overcoming all of that now.
It makes you part of your journey, though.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you manage to kind of point it into this direction rather than abusive?
It's interesting because I grew up in that environment, and I have a lot of friends that grew up in that environment and have continued those kind of cycles where you stay in the family business and you do things like that. Um, I think there was a couple things, like I read a book when I was about 15, and it was called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield, but it was written for teens. And so it was like the first self-help book I'd ever come across. It was about you are the 5 people you spend your most time with. Like, it was about something greater than yourself. And I had friends that were in the church and stuff, and I've been to church a few times, but just really didn't sit with me. And I guess this was like a way of finding, that greater power, or, we go for that faith or whatever outside of myself. And really, one of the chapters in there is about taking 100% responsibility for your life. And when you're 15 and your parents cook drugs and take drugs, and you're like, well, how am I responsible for that? I'm going to take responsibility for where my life goes from here. So there was that, and that book honestly was like a massive catalyst in changing my life. But also like a deep knowing, and sometimes it was only like the tiniest pinprick of hope, but knowing that I was supposed to be there for it to be different. I went through some really heavy like mental health challenges, and there was definitely a time where I wanted to take my own life, and went down that avenue. I never followed through with taking my own life, and it was literally like that tiny little pinprick that I knew the things that I'd been born into and the things that had happened to me, like I was there to inspire others for it to be different. And I'm really thankful for that, because I know a lot of people don't have that. But yeah, those 2 things definitely like massive catalysts in not following those footsteps. And the older that I've gotten, like I've definitely partaken and tried different drugs, and I drink and do all those things now. But at that time in my life, like I still wanted those thrills and those highs, but I wanted to get them from other places. So challenging myself, and like, I have this belief that before we come here, we choose the life that we're born into, and we choose the soul contracts that we have. And I've actually since read a really good book that kind of explains all of this, and I fucking love. So
What is it? What
it's
book
called
is it?
Journey of the Souls, and it's a psychiatrist or psychologist that used to see patients and then do hypnotherapy with them, and he found that across, there's like 7,000 of them, they'd all taken back to the same place and kind of share like a similar experience about having your soul family, essentially. And so anyway, he took 25 of those and wrote a book based on the consensus of bringing them all together, and it's how I've always thought about life. So I figured if I came here to learn these certain lessons in my life, and go back to my soul family or whatever, and have grown and learned, like I want to do as many as I can now, so I don't have to keep coming back and trying to learn all the things and do all the things. Like, okay, this scares me, do it. Okay, have I learnt? Go. And like just keep going, because then I don't have to keep coming back.
I love that drive and ambition. It's incredible. I would love to talk more about the recent event that you held, and it was a cacao ceremony and somatic dance. Could you tell us a little bit more about what those things are?
So cacao is like an ancient Peruvian drink, I guess, or I say ancient. Like, it's only really come into the Western world recently, but it's through the cacao plant. So we have coca, but cacao is just an unreformed version of that. But essentially, it's a plant medicine. So it's not ayahuasca where it like mind alters you to a degree where you see different stuff, but it's more like a gentle, heart opening, expansive lineage. And so I love cacao, and I love being able to drop back into myself. I guess it's another practice that I use to like connect back to my intuition and do all of that. And I really wanted the opportunity to share that. Like, I love ceremony, and I love ceremony with anything, and I don't have ceremony every day of my life because I don't want it to feel like a chore, but I really love carving out the space, even if it is just to make a cup of tea or make a cacao and sit. And I think it's really beautiful to be able to sit with sisters.
Me too.
That's one thing like I'm really exploring at the moment, is like that sacred sisterhood and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I love cacao, and it just came. I'll explain the process of creating the mini retreat day that we did soon. But so cacao and then dancing. I've always loved to dance, like always, but it's probably been maybe like the last 4 years where I've really just like let myself be in that space. And dancing for me is something that I use like if I'm angry, or if something bad's happened, or if I am happy, and it's just a way that I can move through my emotion. And so somatic therapy is releasing stored emotions in the body through movement. So it's not always dancing, but dancing is a really good way to do that. And so the day that we had the somatic like dancing was kind of based on 5 rhythms, which is I think you can do like a practitioner's training in it, and they dance through like fear, and then anger, sadness, joy, and then compassion. So it's based on those principles, and then they use different speeds of music and different music so you can kind of like go on that journey. And I have some really beautiful friends in Melbourne that started this in lockdown in April, I think. They're all in Melbourne. They've been in lockdown. They're still in lockdown. It's called the High Vibe Collective, and they're both healers, and they just get a bunch of people every month to come together on a Zoom call, and it's probably about 90 minutes, and each person does their own little segment, like meditation. I've been on there and done dancing. People will do sound healings.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'll actually remind me to send it to you, because they've got one this Saturday. So they do
cool.
one once a month, and it's cool, and then they have the replay. But I watched my friend Victoria doing like a really small 5 rhythms segment on there, and all of a sudden I had this like, I call it a download from spirit. And if you're not familiar with like what that is, it was just like this idea that came to me that felt really expansive and like joyful, and it didn't really feel like mine, but it was coming through. So I wrote it all down, and it was to do like a dance day with women. And then like literally it was only like a 5-minute process. I was like, oh, and there'd be a cacao ceremony, and we'd do this meditation, and we'd do this, and I wrote it all down, and I looked at it, and you know, after you have those downloads or you have those nudges from spirit, you're always like, nah, I'm making that up, or nah, I could never do that.
Yep.
And this is probably the first time I was like, okay, I'm going to do it spirit and just see what happens. I've definitely followed through on those nudges, but just not in that like capacity. And there was, for me, for the first time, no attachment to it either. So it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it out there. If I get people to come, like 10 people would be cool, but that's it. And then so I made the little infographic thing that I put on Facebook, and like, I had about 8 people within the first 2 hours of putting it out there, and I was like, cool, like that's enough. And by the end of it, there was 10, and then we had 9 on the day because one woman couldn't make it. But yeah, it was just a really fun experience to like let spirit flow through me. And I'm usually quite a planner in the things that I wanted to do. I did write down them. I love meditating, and I love writing guided meditations. So I wrote down a guided meditation that I took you all through, because I really like that came through before the day. But the rest of it, I was like, I'm gonna hold the space, and I have no expectation of what it will be, and I want everyone to have the experience that they want to have, and just really surrendered it over. But that's been like a very big process to get to that state.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, for those of us who aren't quite there yet, do you have any advice about, you know, really listening to those and following through? Because yeah, I found that to be quite a difficult thing.
Yeah, so listening to those nudges from spirit or your intuition, like, it's just like practice. So it might even be like this, a small thing like, go to the shops now, and you're like, oh, what do I need to go to the shops for? Like, go down to the beach now, or you should go for a walk now. And then you go for that walk, and you run into someone that you've been wanting to see all day, or you go to the shops and they have something that you've been waiting to come in, or you go to the beach and you see dolphins, or whatever it is. Like, just practicing with those small things, and the more you practice, it might even be like to call that person and they're like, oh, I was just thinking of you, and you've followed that intuition or the intuitive hit. And the more that you practice and the more that you say to the universe or the world, like, I'm doing these things, I'm showing up, I'm showing up, I'm showing up, the more they come. And like the easier it gets to trust, like, okay, I'm crazy that I'm going to go to the shop just before it closes. Hopefully I get there in time. And then you get there and you run into that person or whatever it is. Just really showing up and doing those things. I think that's the best way to just practice. Or I spoke with a friend recently who's trying to practice or kind of like almost predicts things before they happen. I was like, just start writing them in a journal. You don't have to tell anyone that you think this is going to happen or this is going to be the outcome. Just start writing them down, and then you can look back and be like, oh, I did think it was going to go this way, or oh no, I was completely wrong, or whatever it is. And not 99% of the time he's been right. He's like written them all down and then being able to refer back and being like, yeah, that happened, oh yeah, I thought that. And I think that's really big too, because we think in our minds, oh, I've made that up, or that's not true. So just when you feel those things coming down, just even writing them down, and you might not follow through on them. You might not go to the shop, and then 2 days later you see that person, and like, oh, I was in Cook's Beach and at the shop, at 2 o'clock the other day, and you're like, oh, I was going to go down then, and I should have, but I didn't. Or just keeping a note, playing with it. You're not always going to get there.
For those of us who haven't really connected with our intuition and things before, do you have any advice on how?
I love that you asked. I actually, so I've just created a meditation to connect back to your intuition, and I'm just getting the workbook done this week. It's going to be a free download
cool.
on my website, hopefully by the end of this week. But it is something that I really want to help people to do more. So I mentioned before, intuitive business consulting, and I did some polls on my story on Instagram the other day about like intuition and intuition-led business and things like that. But a lot of people were also like, I think my question was, do you connect with your intuition? And one of it was like, so deeply, and the other one was like, my what? And there was an overwhelming response of like, my what? Like, what's my intuition? And so I've created a meditation so that you can just anchor down to that deep knowing, and I think it does come back to creating that space. But I've guided it so that you connect with your intuition and you ask, like, how do you show up for me and do these things? And then a workbook so you can just write those things down, and then you can come back or you can do the process again and just see if that changes, because I think you build a relationship with your intuition. And for anyone watching that just wants to do that right now, like, you can just close your eyes and take a deep breath, and then just start to feel your energy come back into your body. And sometimes that's even the hardest part for people, because our energy is so outside in the external world. It's like just about coming back to ourselves, and then just listening, like creating that space to listen. You might feel crazy at first, like, am I making that up? Did I really think that? Did spirit give me this? Like, maybe you made it all up, maybe you are crazy, but like, maybe just give it a try and see what happens.
And I've really found that, because I've been dealing with this inner turbulence around my spirituality, because I have been surrounded and really felt connected with science, and always feeling like I need to have the evidence in front of me. And as soon as I have released myself from feeling like I need to have that, I just feel so much better in myself. I don't feel like I've got the same stresses as I used to. And I feel like I'm stopping myself from like speaking to my friends from back home, because I don't want to be questioned with what's happened to you, and all that kind of stuff. Like, how do I bridge that gap, or is it even necessary for me to?
Well, the first thing would be, do you think it's necessary for you to bridge that gap, or that that it's gonna have to be a transition, like that your friends and family won't just accept you for you, and maybe not, but maybe. It's just interesting that you say that. So I love Joe Dispenza, and I talk about him all the time, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he studies heart coherence and meditation, but the science behind it. So people like you who need science and need to see the process of spirituality or connecting down to your heart space, that science is there, which is great because a lot of people still need that. But I think it's about like we do all this work and like we meditate or we do NLP or we do somatic therapy or dancing or connecting back to our intuition and all of it, and it's slowly letting go of those layers of our conditioning in our society, so it can feel really scary and vulnerable to show back up to the people that have known us our whole lives and showed up differently. But I truly believe and truly think that when you are aligned and deeply aligned with how you're showing up, that people around you can feel that difference, and so it might be different to what they're used to, but that's you in your authenticity. And then in saying that, there are going to be people who drop off, but also that is really necessary as well sometimes. And a lot of people find it hard when they've known people forever. Like, I've known this person since kindy, like they're in my life. Like, when was the last time you questioned why you have the friends in your life? Is it because you've known them from kindy and you just feel like an obligation to them, or is it because you genuinely get a connection from that person, or you genuinely want to spend time with them and do things with them or share with them? And I think that's really important too, is questioning, like, why do I feel like I need to show up this way? Is it because they won't accept me? Like, and it's hard because sometimes you do have friends that drop off, or you have people that you thought would be in your life forever drop off, and people that you want to still be in your life, but they don't want you to be in their life. And that's, I guess, part of the learning and the change, is that we're not for everyone, and we might have been for someone for a little bit, but sometimes when we stop playing a certain role in people's lives or stop showing up how they expect us to show up, then the dynamics change, because the energy dynamics change. So if you've always had someone that's come to you to complain about things, and then all of a sudden you don't hold the space for that, like, they might get really angry at you because you're not having that, then you're not showing up for them how they need you to show up. And it doesn't mean that it's fair for them to get angry at you, but it's also you creating that new energetic boundary where you know, well, I'm not showing up for you in that capacity anymore, so if this needs to fall away, then I trust. I think a lot of it comes back to like a really deep trust and a really deep surrender.
Thank you.
Just being gentle with yourself too.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because I mentioned to you before, my inner voice just I'm working on it to not always now, but definitely used to be really negative and self-defeating and quite nasty. And so I used to do everything to keep myself occupied, so I didn't have to listen to those voices. And it's been a really uncomfortable journey to get to the place where I am now. But it's just so liberating, to actually listen to yourself and say, actually, this isn't serving me anymore. I'm not gonna listen to that anymore. So yeah, it's really powerful and really uncomfortable.
It's beautiful. And have you taken a moment to just acknowledge yourself?
Yeah, totally. I do that.
The vulnerability.
Yeah.
Perfect. It is the inner critic is a very interesting topic, because we grow up in a society where we are marketed things to make our life better and products to make us different, because who we are isn't enough.
Yeah.
What we have isn't enough. And that is essentially just that big marketing loop that we're born into. Like, that is just, it is what it is. But if we, like, and we fall into that because we see our mothers and our friends and our aunties and our fathers and whoever, we see all of them in that track, I guess. And so we grow up hating the way that we look or how we dress, or not fitting in where we feel like we need to fit into this societal normal conditioning. And that's how all of these companies make their money. Like, if every single woman in this world woke up tomorrow and knew their worth, that they were born innately worthy, all of like the beauty product industry, all of that would crumble because we wouldn't feel like we need to have this moisturizer to stop us getting wrinkles, to God forbid people know that we've aged. Like, I fucking think it's a beautiful thing to age. I had so many friends die before I was 18, like way too many deaths. I averaged like 2 funerals a year.
God.
But yeah, by the time I was 26, I'd been to over 26 funerals. Like, it was a very low point. And I think, fuck, if I make 50, like, me.
Yeah.
I've lived a great life. My friends didn't even make 18. Some of my friends haven't made 25. Like, I just think that our inner critic, like, when we get so stuck in that, and I've definitely been in that. Like, I've had some really dumb eating disorder stuff and wanting to take my own life and stuff that you get in your head. But essentially, like, and I only say this now having gone through all of that, and it's not just something you can decide overnight. But if I hate myself, and I hate the way I look, and I hate my body, and I hate who I am, and I hate this world, like, I'm letting everyone else win. I'm letting these marketing companies win. I'm letting these people who don't even know me win. And like, what's the point of that? Like, if I came here to learn all these lessons, like, I want to learn them so I don't have to keep coming back. Like, I want to show up, and I want to be an inspiration for people to know that they can show up authentically and in their radiance and in sisterhood and all of those things, because we need examples of that.
Absolutely.
And I get to be one in this world, so I'm going to do that.
I love that. I think it's so true, you know, about outsourcing our need and desire for validation from other people, and you know, it's so important to bring that within. Do you have like any tools in your toolbox for us?
Yeah, validation is a huge one, and because it is such, or some people, the way that they process information is to talk it out loud so that they can hear it, and then that is a validation process in itself. But it depends who you're talking to, because if you have the wrong people around you, they won't validate you for what's true for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, we constantly want to be validated by the outside world, because we think if we follow these innate knowings and these wisdoms in our hearts, because they're not normal, or because they might, you know, have me wear this or do that, that we're not fitting in that societal box again. So I think it's about like building up that bravery in ourselves and just practicing with small things, and having 1 or 2 close people, if you can, saying, I really want to work on my external validation, but I trust you to hold space for me. And sometimes if I need external validation in something I'm doing, would it be okay if I talk to you about that? I don't always need your opinion, or whatever it is. You can say, I don't always need your opinion, but I would just like to feel supported. Or like really creating those friendships where you can celebrate your wins and celebrate the cool things that are happening, and also talk about your challenges if you need to. Like really creating those spaces that you can have those things.
I think that's just so perfect. And actually, for me, when I was back home, having friends who just hold space for you and didn't feel like that was just, you know, it was never there. And actually, a lot of my friendships were built around gossiping and, you know, talking about other people. And it's only been since I've allowed myself the space to, you know, just be myself and let go of the people that just, you know, weren't there for me and my progress, is you know, I've allowed myself to have friends that actually, you know, just want to listen without feeling the need to feedback, and that's so special, and something that I was just never aware of, you know, existed in the world. It's
well, you also can't do better till you know better. And for a lot of people as well, they might be thinking like, oh, how would I ever even have those friendships? And sometimes it is about saying, hey, I'm learning now, I want to do this, will you be that person for me? And like just starting from there. But also how you said, like, a lot of friendships are built around gossip, and it's all about that wanting to fit in again. And it's really terrifying when you feel like you might be the only one that doesn't fit in this whole world. I think what we forget is quite often we're not the only one feeling the way that we feel. So even being able to talk about those experiences, will be like, I feel like I'm the only one who does this or feels this way. Like, most of the time there'll be someone around you that's like, nah. It's about having those vulnerable experiences.
That's true.
And they don't always go well. sometimes you're vulnerable with people and they're like, well, you're a fucking weirdo. Like, well, now I'm comfortable enough in my skin to be like, yeah, I am. But, you know, it's building up that resilience and building up that trust. And the more we do that, the more we pave the way. So, like, if we have children and then they have children, the way's paved differently, and it's not all about unlearning and unpacking all of this terrible stuff that goes on.
Absolutely, yeah, and I can really relate to that kind of, you know, stopping what's happened in the past and not kind of perpetuating that lineage that I've had to deal with, and
Yeah.
you know, starting afresh for
Yeah.
the next generation. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Itself,
I really feel like there's kind of a theme of living courageously and really, you know, showing up authentically and, you know, being vulnerable. And all of those things are really quite difficult to do. Or are they difficult? And for me, that it's been, you know, kind of, I guess, feeding into the comfort zone thing. You're really just feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That's a book.
It is, but it's very true. It's kind of my life. Yes, they are scary and terrifying every time. My Instagram, I share a lot of my own personal journey, and I share about some really hard times and stuff or around the times that they come up. And again, this has been built up because I have been vulnerable and decided to share because it's scary, and I'll get a message with someone saying, thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't realize that was normal, or I didn't know that other people felt that way, or that's really explained something that I've felt, and
Yeah.
I'm going to go get help, or you've helped me through a really dark time. Like, I've had people say, like, you've saved my life.
Oh, wow.
And even if I'd only ever affected one person like that, I would continuously show up the way that I do. But because I quite often, as soon as I have a really vulnerable share on Instagram, which is like my preferred medium, I guess, I'll get messages like that, like, thank you for sharing. Like, I guess it's part of that journey I've been on since I was 15, of showing up authentically. And I have had that validation, I guess, externally from people reaching out. Like, that's not why I've done it, to seek that, but it's been a natural byproduct of the things that I've done. And I'd say a part of it is because I'm an Aries. So an Aries is about, like, the wording with it is I am. And that's fiery, and it's passionate, and it's showing up, and it's sometimes being childish, but feeling the fear and doing it, like, I was going to say blazing the way, like just creating that path. But also I know that the specific body that I was born into, and the specific personality that I have, and all of these things that I chose before I came here, means I can reach a lot of people, and I'm a safe space for a lot of people. And so because of the work that I've done, I'm going to use that to create the most change. Like, my main reasons for not taking my life was finding something greater than myself to live for, and that was of being in service to the world. And that is by showing up vulnerably and courageously and bravely to show others that you can, and that there's a different way to do it, and to just try help more people stand in that space. Because how liberating is it when you see someone who is lit up and in their truth?
Yeah.
Like, that's contagious.
It really is.
And you see it and you're like, fuck yeah, I want to be part of that. And to be part of that is to create that space and be like, what lights me up? What makes me so excited and is infectious to the people around me, in a good way, not in a corona way.
I think it's so true, because for a long time, for me, I just considered myself as separate. It's just me, and I'm in this alone.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you start finding passion in supporting other people, and you know, sharing vulnerably with other people,
Yeah.
it kind of makes you feel a lot more connected.
Yeah.
Like, Yeah, it kind of, like you say, gives you like a bigger purpose than just, living your life just for yourself.
It's interesting that you bring this up, because part of what I do and the friends that I have is about creating that deeper connection and being vulnerable, because I feel like when you're vulnerable with people and you are speaking from that pure place, like, people might not agree with what you're saying, but you can't argue with someone who's speaking from their truth.
Yeah.
Like, if that is someone's pure truth, you can tell that. Like, if you're having a conversation or even an argument with someone and someone drops down into that space and expresses something, you might not agree, but over lockdown I created a game called Candid. It's actually going through a rebrand, so that's not what the name's going to be anymore, but it's a question-based game on vulnerability and intimate connection, so that you can get to know people better. But my reason for creating it was because I still feel like when you have a deeper connection with even just one person, someone you can be completely vulnerable and open with, then there's less of a reason that you would take your life. So 30% of the profit goes to I Am Hope Foundation in New Zealand, which helps have free mental health care for New Zealanders. And also, if you have that deeper connection, even like a tool to get a deeper connection with someone like that you can be vulnerable with, it's that preventative. There's less likely of a chance that you're going to do something like take your own life, because you know that at least that one person cares and you've had that deeper connection with.
Wow.
And so vulnerability and sharing and creating this space, like, I've got a friend who heard about the game. I was like, oh, Kaitlyn just wants us to all have conversations like she does. She just wants us to be on her level, and was kind of like taking the piss of it, which is cool, because he's just not ready to sit at that level, and that's fine. And I can have great conversations with him, but he doesn't want those with other people. But I feel like having the tools to create that space, that's how we create deeper connection. That's how we realize that we're not all alone in what we're thinking, and that's how we create those deeper friendships and those deeper connections where you can be like, oh, today I'm actually not okay, like, I need a hand, or oh my god, I did this really cool thing. And it's like, you have people celebrate with you as well. Like, you can have vulnerable, deep connections that aren't always about like the happy-go-lucky stuff, but if you can have deep connections with people like that, then you have people that also celebrate with you, because we don't celebrate enough.
That's true.
We don't be like, I love to celebrate, I love to drink champagne, so any excuse.
Oh, Kaitlyn, thank you so much. Can I just finish, if you feel okay, to just share a little bit about what inspires you and what keeps you motivated?
Yeah. I was going to say the people inspire me, and then I was like, I'm not standing on the stage in front of millions. But it is watching other people be lit up and inspired by what they do. It's about myself being scared to share something, and then having people say, you've really helped me transition through this, or you've given me the courage to actually go back to counselling or do these things. And having that mixed with like my deep trust and anchoring with spirit and with what my mission here in this lifetime is, it's the reason that I keep showing up every day, and that I haven't stopped, and that I want to create a difference in this world, because I was given the ability to do that. And I think we all are given the ability to make a difference in this world. But sometimes if you don't have someone else paving the way for you, you don't believe it's possible. And we're in the process of creating a world that's different to what we've ever seen. And I was just given a little extra dose of fuck it. Let's do it. Thankfully.
Have you got any extra doses for me?
Just,
Thank you.
yeah, just every time just think, oh, yeah, I'm just going to borrow a little bit of Kaitlyn energy, and fuck it, I'm just going to do it.
Thank you, I love that. I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to meet you and spend some time with you, and I'm so grateful for the ceremony and dance. That was just so special, and I can't wait to attend more of your whatever you're being called to do next.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I just love even chatting about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, me too.
This makes me lit up and being around like-minded people and beautiful. I love beauty, so being in beautiful locations like this, I'm all for it.